good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. Again, I am Shenell Felix, and this morning I have the pleasure of chatting about what's happening with the fisher folk here in Tobago. Since that oil spill in February, a lot has unfolded since then. There have been a number of conversations, consultations, conversations regarding funding specifically is one that we're going to be touching on a bit this morning as I chat with the chairman of the All Tobago Fisher Folk Association, the president, Mr. Curtis Douglas. Good morning, and how are you doing?
Good morning to Trinidad and Tobago and to the entire world. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. So I'm here to shed some light on developments, new and old, also past developments that have been taking place in the diaspora of the vicinity of Tobago and in the terms of that hydrocarbon that had flooded and devastatingly damaged the island of Tobago.
Right. So again, Mr. Douglas, I mean, you are no stranger to this. We have had this conversation on several occasions in regards to updating Tobagonians on what is happening post the oil spill. The conversations are many. There was the conversation about the ability to fish in the water. There was the conversation more recently about the fact that the vessel was still leaking oil.
Yes.
And there is the conversation among fishermen that when they go out to fish in certain areas, you can still see the hydrocarbon in the water. However, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries is now saying that there's no longer, any residue of that oil spill in the water, but you are seeing something different. Who do you report it to when the person that you're supposed to report it to says, well, no, that's not possible, there's no longer any residue underwater?
Well, this is a problem what we have in Trinidad and Tobago. What is absent from that entire conversation is the truth. Right? There is a scarcity or the absence of the truth. Because we are here, fishermen are on a daily basis are seeing oil, and now we are seeing oil and sargassum mixing together. And as such, we are even seeing it, even to push it even further. We are seeing it outside Castara, Plymouth, and these areas. So where does the oil spill come from? Where is the Tobago counterpart? This is Tobago, right? The assembly, and they are responsible for 4 or 5 or even 6 nautical miles or 10. Where are they in all of this? Even though the Ministry of Energy is responsible and the Ministry of Energy is denying, and we are seeing it blatant in your face. Rain is falling and you're going outside and you're getting wet in the rain, and they're telling you rain is not falling. What happened? Are you an oxymoron? Eh? So what you're saying to the Tobagonians, to the fisher folk, we are stupid. We don't know what we are seeing. We don't know what we're experiencing. And what we're experiencing is a fragment of our imagination. Right? So when you have the oil in your hand and you're seeing it plain, the hydrocarbon in your hand, and you're seeing it on your nylon, you're seeing it on your nets, you're seeing it on your boat, you're even pulling it in your impellers. Right? So what you're saying, what we're saying not true, I think the Ministry of Energy need to come clean. And I also believe we need a more wider representation from the THA. We need the THA representative to make demands so that these little pockets of things can be fixed. It's not about war. It's not from where it's not about war. It's about solving the problem. And if we start to don't pay attention to the problem, it only could get worse.
So the extent of the oil that is still underwater, how is something like this solved?
Right. How it is solved? No. You would have a assessment of the boat. So you will have the fisher folks and also Alvin, and they will go out, will do a assessment of it, see where it's leaking, and also how often does it appear? And when it appears, what do we do when it appears? And what we do when we appear, we could have absorbing booms to absorb it so it does not spread to the fishing grounds or to the fishing grounds and kill and damage our natural resources.
So how has this affected the fishermen's ability to fish at this moment?
Right. So what it does, your engine itself will pull, because what happened, the engine that we operates, it uses the water itself to cool the system. And you can imagine you drinking water to cool the system and you drinking this hydrocarbon, this oil in your system. Obviously, you will get sick. Most time we will break down. And that is the same process will happen with the engine. It will break down. It also happens with the sarcasm. It pulls the little weeds they have and it clogs the impellers, so the engine overheats and the pistons and them smash. Right? So that is, and also, it also hambugs you from fishing. So when you run out your nylon and your bait and you get all oil and dark and infected, no fishing ain't going and bite that. That's not attractive. It's not like we're playing it's no mom mass. You understand? So it would create a negative effect on the fisherman and also the ecosystem that we're trying to maintain a balance so that we could be able to preserve our natural resources.
Right, and so what has the conversation been thus far with the THA in regards to what the fishermen have been seeing when they go out to fish?
Well, we haven't had, to be honest, we haven't had that level of conversation as yet. We're still pending, waiting for a meeting to be able to treat with the problem, right? So
the longer you wait for a meeting, how does the problem become exasperated by that?
well, the problem will become exasperated because if you have a sore on your foot and you don't intend to clean that wound and clean it and dress it, obviously it's gonna expand and it could even turn to gangrene. And we are trying now to mitigate that by calling the authorities. Hey, let's have a meeting. Let's treat with this. This is Tobago. We depend on tourism. So we can't even take people sports fishing, right? We can't tourism. We can't even do that, right? Because the facilities doesn't allow you to. And for you to go fish now, you have to go 30 and 14 miles, right? And even in that mileage, you will see some of the oil. Because just the other day, I'm on the plane and I'm seeing the whole mass of oil throughout Tobago. And you are telling me the Ministry of Energy, who really now are solely responsible for the well-being of our natural ecosystem now in Tobago, right? Are saying they are not seeing it. So if that is the case, why it is that the Ministry of Energy have that ghost buster, that orange thing you see park up outside of Scarborough Day, that is to take up the oil, to capture the oil, right? So why it is there? Why it is they was using it? So come on. Is what the total disrespect about Tobagonian. This is Trinidad and Tobago, and we ought to done away with those rubbish whereby you from Trinidad, you from Tobago. This is one republic. I have aunts and brothers and sisters living in Trinidad. We all are one, right? We are about to done away with that nonsense, and let's cooperate. Let's come together,
Right.
and let's fix it.
What conversations have you been having whereby you could possibly update Tobagonians on when we can possibly see the removal of that ship from Tobago waters? Do you know when they plan on moving that?
Well, from the last information that I would have gotten, well, the word from the Prime Minister, he would have said, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to misquote the Honorable Prime Minister. I think he would have said by mid-July that vessel supposed to be removed. Now, in removing that vessel, if right now we are seeing all of that oil spill is still taking place, it needs a collaboration with the Ministry of Energy, the Fisher Folk, TEMA, and THA because we need a concerted effort in order to treat this. Now, I want people to understand, we sell tourism in Tobago. I make no apologies when I say Tobago still is the bestest little island in the world. You only have to travel and see what we have. But sometimes when people don't travel, they have nothing to compare it with. But being all over the globe, I will tell you, Tobago is the bestest little island in the world.
All right. We're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be back right after this as we continue our conversation. See you soon.
It's a brand new morning, rise up.
morning and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. If you have just joining us, I have been chatting with Mr. Curtis Douglas, who is the president of the All Tobago Fisher Folk Association. Now, very recently, there have been consultations and conversations that have been happening in the Tobago space by the Tobago Oil Spill Relief Committee to discuss compensation to fishermen. Now, there was a conversation that took place. I believe that was at the Shaw Park Cultural Complex, and it ended in frustration from fishermen. They are stating that the requirements to obtain the funds from the International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund are too stringent, and it does not allow for the fishermen to get the type of compensation that they want. Explain to me what type of requirements are being asked of the fishermen.
Okay. Well, basically, that relief program is really chaired by Alan Stewart. He's the one that chaired it, and Alan Stewart and Garth Otley. They were the two chairman, vice chairman in that committee. Now, that committee, they really supposed to be really collecting data to also to submit to the THA to find out the extent of damages or loss, financial loss, the fishing community would have sustained due to the hydrocarbon and the Gulf Stream oil spill. Now, in anything that you do, obviously you would have to acquire or ascertain some form of data. For example, you can't tell me you're a fisherman and you don't have a fisherman ID. Or if you don't have one, you should find one, right? And if you're affected by the oil spill, you should then be able to say, well, hey, I used to go to sea here, or what are the things I used to do that, I was affected by, and how I was affected. For example, if you go and fishing, how much fish you used to catch there? What type of fish you used to catch there, right? And these are some of the criteria. Two, you must also identify that if you are a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, right? So we don't want anybody, you don't want anybody that's walking in and they say, hey, I'm going to sign up this form and can't show that, listen, you're authorized or you're allowed to apply for this grant or this relief, right? So two, they were asking, which is not mandatory, a BR number. It is not mandatory, but it will help run the process. And three, if you have any photos or any videos as such to help you boost your application, these are some of the requirements that they're asking for. Even though it may be 6 months after, where at least a step is being taken to ensure that the Tobago diaspora who was affected by this oil spill would be able to get some form of relief.
So those pictures or videos, is it of the fishermen actually at sea so that it proves that they are actual fishermen? What are the photos and videos that they're asking for?
Well,
or
right.
Is it of the damages to the equipment?
So if it, for example, if you would have taken any pictures of your nylon, your fads, your pots and them, all of those would have been damaged. The ropes, so you wouldn't be able to fish. You understand? Mm-hmm. So those are like supporting evidence to show that, listen, hey, I was here and I'm a part of this community that was affected. So these are some of the requests that are really asked in the application. And as such, you can even ascertain or collect the application done at fisheries.
Right. And from what you are seeing is being required on these applications, do you think that it's unrealistic?
I think on the application, what it has is certain things that you must have, which I agree with. You must have, right? And as I said, some of them are just supporting. So it is not, they're not telling you must have this or you must have that. It's certain things you must have, right? For example, your fisherman permit. You must know how much fish you're catching, right? I know there is a poor data system in Tobago, so we have to work with the data that is presented by the fishermen. And we could then use that as a foundation in moving forward, right? So I think it's to ascertain that data, and put that in a database. So in the near future, we could use that, compare that data to any futuristic incident that will be happening. So we'll be able to compare, and also we'll also know, at least have an idea at the level of resources that we have in certain areas.
Right. So you do not agree with some of the folks who said that the requirements were a bit unrealistic.
I think they didn't or I think they didn't really understand, because sometimes how things come across, it might seem to be a very adjective, because remember, this is a sore spot in the fisherman life, because remember, between 6 months, these fisher folks had not been even given any sort of relief. The only relief that they would have had is one-off $1,000 by the THA. So
Right.
they have their loans to pay. So now you come in and tell them, provide some kind of evidence, right? So they already in a soft spot. So they will react in a more aggressive way if you should know fisher folk. But I think it is not. I don't think the some of the requests is a bit too stringent. It's just understanding. It's really basically a simple process, because once you fill out, listen, I'm a fisherman ID, how much I catch a day, how often do I go to sea, or whatever, what boat I go with, the number of the boat, and stuff like that. Basic things. I don't think it is a bit draconian or.
Okay. And are there any persons that are specifically put in place to assist the fishermen in filling out the forms?
I think you can. I think if I'm not mistaken, they can contact what advertised Mr. Derek Leet if they have any complications.
Right.
Derek Leet and also Mr. Alan Short. These are the two numbers that they would have advertised to help the fisher folk. And yes, I think you could 211. You could call, because you have the online, and then I'm seeing where they would have introduced the ITOF people who say you could apply online and fill out the form and see how best you could be compensated. So that is
Right.
what I would have said.
And when we look at the type of compensation that they're planning to give, has there been any type of negotiation in regards to the figures?
I haven't. You cannot negotiate the figures unless you have the data. So for example, remember what ATFA did? ATFA went around and we would have done an assessment based on how much a fisherman gonna lose on a daily basis, and comply that and compound that based on the month to the time. So I don't know if they're using the same process, right? But if they're using that process, then they probably will come to a borderline figure. I'm not sure. They may come to a borderline figure and say, hey, this is the borderline figure or the baseline figure that we're going to use to be able to compensate fisher folk. So that is left up to the people or the THA or ITOF to really ascertain. That's a question I can't really.
And what is the fisherman in Tobago real problem at this point in time? Well, what would you say when you look at the grand scheme of issues that they are facing? What is the key problem faced by fishermen right now?
The key problem faced by fishermen, one, it's been 6 months and you haven't paid them their money. Two, they need a timeline when they gain their money, right? And three, it's about high time. Either the teacher or the government work with ATFA for us to create a proper database. So when these things happen, we could go directly to the database and access it and say, well, this is what and that is that. And we have 5,000 entrepreneurs, and this is what they're earning on a daily basis. These are some of the key things that are affecting fishermen. And the next key thing that is affecting fishermen is the length of time they have to wait to get the fisherman permit. Imagine you sending Trinidad, you going to Tobago and fill up a fisherman permit. And when it comes back to Tobago, it comes back expire. So what is the purpose you even signing up to get a fisherman permit? So they need to do more. So we need more structure so that the fishermen can get that ease, right? But fishermen need to get paid. School is going to be opening just now with no way on holidays, and they need to buy their school books. They need to feed their families. They need their money, and they need it now.
Are you satisfied with the type of investment or focus that has been placed on developing the blue economy within the last budget presentation by the Chief Secretary?
Well, I deal with facts. I deal not with not with words, on what is being displayed. All right? So I'm seeing in the fishing industry, we haven't grown since. We haven't got four big boats that could go out and catch a flying fish. We haven't received that. We haven't even have a proper rescue boat. We ain't even have a boat to really go around and to take data to know how many Bajan fishing on water, how much Anguillan fishing on water. We haven't done that. So in the terms of growth in the food security in the fishing industry, I find it is moving like a snail. Right? I find it's moving like a snail, and more needs to be done. And sometimes not to take away from that. In order for more to be done, the central government itself must be able to pay attention to emphasize and put funding into those areas in order for them to develop to be sustainable for the island of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
But even when the money is being allocated, do you think that sufficient focus is being placed on developing the fishing industry in Tobago?
That is why I'm here, to ensure, doesn't matter who is in power, we are going to call upon them to do what the money is allocated to do. So if on this budget, Mr. Imbert and the Prime Minister decide to say, well, okay, we're going to give the fishing industry $30 million for development in the fishing industry. That's giving us a little place to hang our boats and a little industry so we could be able to can our own fish in Tobago and stuff like that. And also to buy at least 3 boats so we could have a collaborative effort and we could also ascertain data. I'm just using that figure, right? With that, we could say we are making the first step to the first 1,000 steps, right? And also ATFA will play a very integral role, because what I'm realizing, when it leaves so much things in the hands of the government only, it collapses. But when you have private partnership in it, it seems to have a different approach and a different results, meaning it is more successful. And these are some of the things we are talking about. If you're talking about in this way of blue economy, yes, that is what we're talking about. And the same goes for the agriculture. The same goes for housing. The same goes for employment, whereby we create new employment for the children. So when they leave school, we don't have a drain and people walking on the streets. So that will also help. And it will also curb to a healthy living, because people are more busy and people will now start to be able to function on a different basis. So younger people can now start to own houses, and it will have a downstream effect. And this is how I just ascertain and judge a blue economy based on my production and results.
All right. Well, we want to thank you so much for coming and presenting your case on behalf of the Old Tobago Fisherfolk Association. Is there anything else that you want to leave us off with as we wrap up this morning's discussion?
Well, we would have heard that as of 3 o'clock on the 17th, the teacher would have received the money. And we are saying as well, as of next week, we're hoping that the fisher folks and the contractors will be paid. And we're also asking that a committee being set up to go back to Imbert and to the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister, to let them know that 50 million is not near enough for the people of Tobago. Because I'm hearing Ms. Becker saying that, the same treatment in Trinidad should be the same treatment for the people in Tobago. I welcome that statement, but I also welcome the action in that statement. So I'm hoping that the Secretary, Mr. Chavez, would be able to form a team with ATFA and certain people and go down to the finance and make a next presentation and let them know that 50 million is not near enough to pay the people who would have safeguarded and protect and preserve the bestest of the island in the world.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to have a quick break right here, and we'll be back with more conversations right after this. See you soon, guys.